From ABC News, new bill would ban gender-affirming care for anyone under 26 in Oklahoma. A new bill would make it a felony for anyone under the age of 26 to access gender-affirming care in the state of Oklahoma. Senate Bill 129, sponsored by Republican State Senator David Bullard, is the most recent anti-transgender care bill to be introduced in an ongoing push against gender-affirming care by Republican legislators across the country. Under this bill, physicians and healthcare providers cannot provide gender transition procedures to a patient under the age of 26 or refer them to any healthcare professional for gender transition procedures. A referral would be classified as unprofessional conduct and may result in immediate revocation of the license or certificate of the physician or other healthcare professional. Oklahoma currently has laws in place that ban trans athletes in state schools from participating in sports that correspond with their gender identity, a ban on trans people using the bathroom that aligns with their gender identity, and bans on non-binary gender markers on state birth certificates. So this is definitely one of the most draconian anti-trans bills I have seen thus far. This bill helps nobody. This bill only appeals to bigots who seek to strip away freedom from groups of people they don't like. And I don't want to fucking hear shit about how this protects the minors. One, this bill aims to make it illegal for people up to the age of 25 to seek gender-affirming care. Last I checked, nowhere in this country, and certainly not Oklahoma, but I'll get to that in a bit, is someone at the age of 25 considered a minor. Two, if you really did give a fuck about the youth, you would instead be advocating for trans youth to be receiving gender-affirming care. From Columbia Psychiatry, the gender-affirming model of care affirms diversity in gender identity and assists individuals in defining, exploring, and actualizing their gender identity, allowing for exploration without judgments or assumptions. This does not mean that all youth need to undergo medical transition. Indeed, this is often not the case. Gender-affirming care is highly individualized and focuses on the needs of each individual by including psychoeducation about gender and sexuality, appropriate to age and developmental level, parental and family support, social interventions, and gender-affirming medical interventions. It is well documented that transgender non-binary adolescents and young adults experience anxiety and depression, as well as suicidal ideation, at a much higher rate than their cisgender peers. According to the Trevor Project's 2020 National Survey on LGBTQ youth mental health, 54% of young people who identified as transgender or non-binary reported having seriously considered suicide in the last year, and 29% have made an attempt to end their lives. In contrast, numerous research studies have found that gender-affirming care leads to improved mental health among transgender non-binary youth. And I know that people have used the suicide statistics in the trans community to say, see, being trans is a mental illness, because look at all these trans people who have killed themselves. Did you ever stop to wonder that maybe you're part of the problem, and all of this anti-trans legislation that's been popping up in the last year alone has been part of the problem too? Because if you're part of a minority group of people that is constantly demonized by so much of the public, you're being smeared constantly as a child groomer just based on your gender identity and how you choose to present yourself. Republican politicians are constantly seeking to strip away your rights and strip away your gender-affirming care that actually improves your mental health. Imagine being on the receiving end of that shit day in and day out. You probably wouldn't be in the best mental condition either. And plus, so many right-wingers make fun of the high suicide statistic in the trans community, which makes up a lot of trans youth, so spare me on the whole we want to protect the youth bullshit. What you really want to do is suppress the rights of a group of people you don't like, because they may not conform to the social norms you believe in. Me personally, I say, live and let live. If they're not hurting anybody, why should I give a fuck about what they're doing? And you shouldn't give a fuck either, because if you weren't constantly putting a spotlight on these people, you wouldn't even know they fucking exist. Pew Research says that 1.6% of US adults identify as trans and or non-binary. I know this percentage does not take into account the amount of people who have come out as trans, but I'd imagine, even if all the people who have yet to come out as trans were somehow factored into this percentage, the percentage of cisgender people in this country would still vastly outnumber the percentage of people who are trans in this country. This is why I'm so fucking sick of hearing about how trans people are plaguing society because they are barely fucking quote-unquote, plaguing shit. They just want to be out there living life the way they choose to live it, but all of you fucking assholes just have a problem with that for some reason. You don't actually care about these people. You just want to see them suffer. Because study after study after study after fucking study has shown that denying these people their gender-affirming care and constantly demonizing them only worsens their mental health. And if your end goal wasn't to ensure that these people face as much suffering as possible throughout their lives, we wouldn't be seeing laws like this pop up. Because we would collectively understand as a society that denying trans people basic human decency and rights does no good and only harms. And this bill only further proves that this whole moral panic was never about protecting the children, but instead all about keeping a marginalized group of people down. Because why at the age of 25 should you be denied gender-affirming care? By the age of 25, you're able to vote, you're able to drink, you're able to drive, you're able to have sex. All of those things you were able to do for fucking years by the time you're the age of 25. And I find it so funny that in Oklahoma, the age of consent is 16. If you're a grown adult and you want to receive gender-affirming care, tough shit, but if you're a grown adult and want to have sex with a teenager, that's perfectly fine. If you don't trust a 25-year-old to receive gender-affirming care, why the fuck do you trust a 16-year-old to have sex? That's a very creepy double standard if you ask me, but anyways, this bill is absolutely awful and absolutely draconian. If put into law, this bill would not only prohibit people 25 and under from being able to transition, but would also force them to medically detransition if they already have medically transitioned. That's totally not draconian at all. The state literally dictating how you present yourself. Mark my words, if Republicans continue to feel comfortable stripping away the rights of LGBTQ plus people, it's not going to stop when someone reaches the age of 26. It's going to get to the point where they try to ban anyone from transitioning. And it is most certainly not going to stop with trans people. Republicans are going to try to make it so anyone who is in the LGBTQ plus community cannot express themselves, regardless of how old they are. That is, of course, if the public allows them to feel comfortable in doing so. Please do not let it get to that point. The Republican Party is an evil, hate-filled party, and fuck anyone who supports it. That's all I have to say. Bye-bye.